Vanity of vanity. All is vanity. The Ravens are back in first place, and the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl again. Everybody, welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We're sponsored by Zeka Enterprises. We're happy about that, but I don't think we're really happy about this last week. What do you say, David?
No, I don't think we are too happy going into it. Of course, we had to start. Already wasn't looking forward to this game, and then they delayed it an hour and a half due to weather. So that wasn't the funnest thing in the world. So I only ended up catching the first half because I haven't been feeling good the past few days. But very similar to last week, in my opinion, as far as our output and our play. I don't know what your thoughts were, but I thought it was a very similar outcome and result of what happened last week.
No, I completely agree. And honestly, well, I was in Pittsburgh, and the funny thing was, the reason why it was delayed was probably the most insane lightning storm I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was something I had never before seen. The lightning was just, it was lighting up the sky, and it wasn't just like a bolt here and a bolt there. It was like, there was so many lightning strikes, like one after another, bang, 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 bang. It was really cool, but at the same time, it did suck that we did have to delay the game by an hour and a half. And you said it at some point before the game. You said, I just hope we don't come out slow. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think they came out slow, and I think the Cowboys came out slow as well. But when you think about just the matchup, when you think about the idea of, okay, this is Sunday Night Football, yeah, we're in a weather delay, but if you come out slow, even when the other team comes out slow, then that's, especially when you're at home, that's not good.
Oh, absolutely. And it just looked like a whole, same thing with it wasn't the same this week. Our offense, I'll give a little bit more credit to them, where they looked, to start out, there were a few plays where it's like, oh man, like you hit that, like we're in rhythm, we're looking good. So I don't think it was the same, whereas like last week it looked like we couldn't really do anything. But defensively, again, coming out, sluggish, and just, I mean, you see the stat line of how many yards that they gained. Like, we got a lot of turnovers, but we got let up all the yards in the world. And it just goes back to, talking about the offense is one thing, but under Tomlin, this is the highest paid defense, and it's letting up the most yards. And I mean, it's just like, what the heck? What do you do? What do you think of the defense?
Well, I think they responded well, especially after giving up a lot of points this last week. And they did have the big splash plays this week that we were looking for last week that we didn't get. Finally, we got a pick in the secondary. This one wasn't Minka. It was close to being Minka. This one was Joey Porter Jr., who had himself an okay game. But again, there's a lot of nuances to this game that are just, I don't know. Like, it's weird because there were a lot of like good things that happened, but at the same time, I think the word that you just used, sluggish, I think that is an underbelly of kind of this game. You talked about the one big splash play that if it hits, then you're in rhythm. Connor Hayward, I mean, that long deep ball, he had it in his hands and he dropped it. And that's the big difference between a field goal there and maybe a drive that could put away the Cowboys early. And we didn't even mention this in the last week, but Brandon Aubrey, I mean, he can hit from anywhere, man. He is pretty incredible. And the fact that they bent only twice to give him field goal opportunities, I think that was kind of a win, because they did hold the Cowboys to some short drives, but at the same time, at the end of the game when it really mattered the most, they couldn't stop Dak. And I think a big part of that was the tight end game. Ferguson, I mean, he torched us. And obviously, he's one of the better tight ends in the league, But if you look back to even the previous week with the Colts, that very last touchdown was to their tight end who just slipped through after a chip on TJ Watt, and they forgot about him. I don't know how you can forget about Jake Ferguson, but he got forgotten about a whole lot this last week, and he was by himself, just in the flat, way too often.
Yeah, well, and that's a interesting point you made about the tight end. I didn't really notice that or focus in on that. And, not to hate on the defense a ton, because, again, 3 turnovers, that's pretty great. A lot of splash plays. Again, we're one play away from winning the game. That fumble on the goal line that we forced, we recover that, it's over, and we're going home with a win. And so I don't want to hate on him too much, but it's kind of like all right, we know we can make the splash plays. Can you do the consistent thing and, stop them, close them out, and not let them get – like my dad was saying, just as per usual with the Steelers defenses, what is it with these third down and longs and the fact that they just know these defenses know exactly where to go. And I just think that we need more of a consistent whole defensive performance. And I just want to say for TJ Watt, getting 100 sacks, the second fastest to ever do it. That's an amazing thing. I love TJ Watt. He's awesome. He's the best. But half a sack in 2 games, come on, we need more, especially since Highsmith is hurt. We need more. These you said, Minka Fitzpatrick almost got in there he almost got in there. There was another play I saw where he was if it wouldn't have been tipped by somebody, he would have had a pick. So I think that our defense as a whole, and it could be the middle. I don't know if this is another week where it's man, did Patrick Queen, where is Patrick Queen not who we thought he was? It's tough to tell right now.
Okay, so going back to your third down points, the Cowboys were 9 for 15 on third down.
Oof, it's not good for a defense.
No, it's not. And we went back to the Colts last week, and we talked about the third and long problems. And there were several times, at least late in the game as well, where the Steelers had a chance to get off the field, and they didn't. And it prolonged a drive. And whether or not that drive ended up in points, again, that's just time ticking off the clock. And in a formula where the Steelers want to control the game, they want to control the clock, they didn't control the clock this game. The Cowboys had at least 5 or 6 minutes more possession than the Steelers did this game. And that's due in part to the offense not being super explosive. But again, it's also the defense in that, when you need that big third down stop, they just don't get it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that part of that, just goes back to just some mismanagement. I'm going to be calling for this every week, but I'm calling for the resignation or firing of Mike Tomlin. One of our friends who's in our Dynasty League, actually, when I was saying something about Tomlin, actually defended him, and he's a Steelers fan. And I was like, oh, no, you're part of the problem if you like Mike Tomlin. I'm just going to say that right now. And I was looking, my dad sent me these statistics. So Cam Hayward played 55 snaps, and he is 35 years old. Cam Hayward's amazing, and he obviously makes great plays.
And he's been one of the best in the league this year in terms of interior linemen.
He has. He's a Hall of Famer, and but when you're that old, we got Keanu Benton, we got Larry Ogunjobi, let's share the wealth a little bit, and kind of going off the defensive side, looking at something else's snaps. Van Jefferson had 47 of 58, and Calvin Austin had 44 of 58, and George Pickens only had 34. Now, you could say, well, what the heck, your number one guy should be out there. And I agree, your number one guy should be out there. However, I have heard of and seen clips of George Pickens absolutely just dogging it and not even trying on plays. And so I think that has this whole team just lost, their belief in the Tomlin way. And I think that might be true, but I think that it's pretty easy to lose faith in the Tomlin way because it's so hollow. You talk about the splash plays, but then the defense gives up all the third downs and all the yardage. It's that's a hollow defense that makes those splash plays but can't do anything to stop. And so I think that it gets me nervous. Do we have another? We've always known that George Pickens is a little crazy, but I think that overall, I think the team is being mismanaged, and it's hard for these guys to feel like they have a chance when, all the little things aren't going right.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem. I mean, he's a diva. We've known that. We knew that the moment we drafted him. I mean, probably the reason he fell to the second round is because of the personality deal. I mean, at that's the whole thing. At Georgia, he was kind of just this menace, and he's still the same thing as he's coming into the NFL. I mean, he had a face mask after the game. He ripped the dude's face mask and shoved him down after the game was over. And it's like, he's complaining. I don't know if you saw the thing that he wore on his eye black, but it was expletive, saying that I'm always open, using a word that I shouldn't say on here. And it's like that's a diva right there, and I mean, it gives me Antonio Brown vibes, which is like Antonio Brown was a diva, but at the same time, like I think he actually I think he had the Hall of Fame pedigree to back it up. I don't know if George Pickens has gotten there yet, and maybe it's because we haven't given him a shot to get there yet. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know if his personality is going to mesh well with us moving forward.
No, and I think that I was wondering what his eye black said. I saw that, and I was like, oh, boy. But that's, sounds like him, and it's unfortunate that that's what that says. And, just a quick thing here. Of course, him and Broderick Jones, both of them are from Georgia. I think that all the guys that come out of Georgia are just problems. And I'm an Ohio State fan, so I hate Georgia. But I just wanted to throw that out there just to throw a jab at Georgia. But I think that George Pickens, yeah, you're right. Like Antonio Brown, and to be honest, like Antonio Brown always kind of had some drama stuff, but it was never anything like too crazy until, after the crazy helmet hit. But yeah, you're right. For 6 years, Antonio Brown put up Hall of Fame statistics. George Pickens has done, I mean, nothing even close to that. I think that, for one, I genuinely haven't seen anything to make me believe that he's a good route runner. I think that, he's just got that I'm super tall and I can run the ball, kind of like Randy Moss. I think that Randy Moss probably was a better route runner, but that concerns me. And yeah, Mike Tomlin, he loves those guys. He loves the guys that has the character and has the drama. However, he runs a team that doesn't really support that. Like it's confusing of Harbaugh, from the Ravens, he'll get these guys like Lamar Jackson or Odell Beckham for like a year, and it's like he knows what he's getting. He knows he's giving that drama, that showy stuff, and he lets them do that. They work the offense for them. They shift things. They change things for them. And Tomlin gets these guys and is like, okay, now run my system. And it's like, well, you're not going to get these guys who think they're the best player on earth to do that. So it's just unfortunate to see just that consistent failure of talent. But I do want to give a little praise to Arthur Smith, because I think that the offensive play calling was some of the best I'd seen since, I don't know, Randy Figner in 2018 or early 2020. Because I noticed a lot of passes down the middle. Justin Fields was zipping in there. We were using the middle of the field. A lot of plays where it's like, oh man, you throw that just right, or you catch that ball. It's a huge play that worked really well. One thing I guess that is just really frustrating to see is that our O-line was dismantled by third string edge rushers, which is like, how do you even let that happen?
Yeah, the Cowboys were injured to all get out, and they got pressure, and that's something that just it can't happen. The whole thing was people were dogging on Fields for either not completing the passes early in the game or not throwing the ball often down the field. But it's like when you don't have any time, what are you gonna do? And like you said, those Cowboys third stringers practically they did the job, and and that caused a lot of problems. And it sucks because if this offensive line, which is already hurt, you gotta take that into account too. But if they can't block these guys that are just picked up off the street, then what are we doing? I mean, Fields honestly. Okay, I'm gonna throw something back to something that you said. You've said it a couple times before. Those design runs at the beginning of the game. Why did they go away from those? Like they got 8 yards on. I think they did it twice at least. They might have done it another one, but those Fields designed runs. This is the first time we really saw that this season, and he got 8 yards of carry on him, and then they didn't do it again pretty much the rest of the game. Like, why do you go away from that? And
Right.
and I will say that the little shovel pass to Pat Freiermuth for the last touchdown, that was a play that looked very much out of Andy Reid's book with the Chiefs. I mean, that's a play right out of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, or to a running back. Like that was a really good play call, and you could tell they practiced that one. It should have gotten called back because of an illegal man downfield, but again, there was a ball don't lie moment later on when Dak went down and scored. But I think that I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to praise Arthur Smith necessarily. I think there were some good moments, but I think overall, again, I think it was very complacent, at least in the first half. I mean, the score was 6-3 at halftime, and I get it. The conditions of the field are whatever, but again, that you can't start slow like that at home on Sunday Night Football in a historic matchup when there's a lot of really important people at the game too. I'll read a list of the important people that were at the game. Elon Musk was at the game. Mark Cuban was at the game. Snoop Dogg was at the game. And Chris Letang was at the game. Like, that is... I don't know if I've seen that much star power at a Pittsburgh sporting event maybe ever. So, I mean, to lose that game in front of that crowd is pretty sucky, I mean, it definitely. And the game was over at 1:00 too. And I know you said that you were not feeling well and you had to go to sleep, but I mean, I stayed up. My grandma went to bed as well. And I stayed up and I had my hands on my knees the whole last drive. And, to go to bed thinking about that, I couldn't go to sleep for an hour because I'm just thinking about, man, like, that's not one that you want to lose. And they had every reason to win that game. You said it. On paper, they have every reason to win this game. They had 3 turnovers and a blocked punt, and they lost. Like, that can't happen. That just can't happen.
No, it can't. And especially, prime time, you were saying a lot of people were there, and it's like to lose it in your own stadium too, with those people being there, it's embarrassing. And to not be like, again, I think that with Arthur Smith's offense, it's like run the ball first, then throw to get it working. And it's like, we can't run the ball. We can't run the ball against all these backups. It's like, how on earth are we going to be able to run the ball against anybody if we can't do it against, a bunch of backups filling in for starters? And I think my biggest concern after this game, I was listening to Good Morning Football, and they were talking about, the obvious news, I'm sure about, what's his name, Robert Saleh being fired from the Jets. And so they were talking about that. And Robert Saleh, through one of the weeks, mentioned a quote from Bill Belichick that says, you don't really know what kind of team you have until week 5. And I was like, that's a really interesting quote, because so the first 3 weeks, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious with Denver and with Atlanta. Like, both teams there we're still trying to figure out what they had, and we're trying to get all the pieces to work together. And so, we get these 3 wins while all these teams are like, what team do we have? And now you see both of those teams are 3-2. And the Chargers, I think they might have had a bye week this week. I don't know really what they're doing. But it really concerns me to see that we're winning when teams don't know who they are. And then once teams now we're in this week 5 thing, when everyone's like, all right, we know what we got, we know who we are, let's go do it. We're like can we only thrive when the team doesn't know what they fully have? And have they figured us out now? Because, we're obviously very easy to figure out. And so I think, where those 3 weeks are bliss, and now it's like, oh, we know what team we have, and it's not good.
Well, that's such a good point. And I was gonna make this point next, but you kind of led me right into it. You tossed me the lob. I mean, this makes it so easy, because we said it last week that the Cowboys just haven't figured out how to run the ball. And then you got this guy named Rico Dowdle, who goes for over 80 yards against us, has a big touchdown, a pass, a catch, late in the fourth quarter, and this was a Cowboys team that didn't really know who they were early on, and now they kind of do know who they are. And the thing is, do the Steelers even know who they are? Or, like what you were saying, are we buying into the bliss of 3 weeks of preying off of Kirk Cousins, who doesn't know who the heck he has around him, Bo Nix, who has played one game in the NFL, the Chargers, who, again, who knows? This is what we prey on. And I talked about it 2 weeks ago because this was a rant of mine. But that 2020 season, they preyed off of just bad teams.
They did.
11-0, they weren't an 11-0 against good teams. They were an 11-0 against teams that were struggling to find their identity, teams that didn't know who they were. And then by the time you get to that Commanders game, or I guess they were the football team then, somebody somewhere in Washington knew who they were. And then Washington ended up going and making the playoffs that year. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The Steelers, they never know who they are because they don't actually ever beat any good teams. And if they do beat a good team, it's because somebody is injured. They're facing a backup quarterback, or some main defensive game wrecker is not in the game. We talked about it. The Cowboys didn't have Micah Parsons or Deron Bland this week, and they still didn't manage a win. Can the Steelers... I'm trying to think of a good team. What's a good example? What do you think would happen? I don't want to say the Chiefs, because that's too easy. What do you think would happen if the Steelers played the Minnesota Vikings this coming week?
Oh my gosh. It would not be good for Pittsburgh, I'll just say that.
Right. That's a Minnesota team that is winning the right way. And I saw this on Twitter today. The only two teams that are undefeated are the Vikings and the Chiefs. The Chiefs have gotten the benefit of the refs, and honestly, they have not played very well. Patrick Mahomes has not been a top 10 quarterback. If you are actually watching the games and if you're actually looking at the stats, he's not a top 10 quarterback. But if you look at the Vikings, the way that they're playing the game, Sam Darnold is a top 5 quarterback and should honestly be in MVP conversations, and their defense is honestly perhaps truly the best in the league. And it's not because of necessarily this talent, because they lost Danielle Hunter, I'm pretty sure, right?
I'm not sure. I didn't know about that, but
I think they did. Maybe I might be wrong about that, but I think they did. So if you think about their one guy from last year, who was their prime blue chip guy, if he's there, if he's not there, I mean, it's not the highest paid defense in the league like ours, but they're doing things the right way. They're winning the right way. They're winning systematic football. They know how to win the game when it comes to the end. And I think that comes down to coaching. I think that comes down to everybody just buying in to how to win. And the Steelers, first off, don't have the good coaching, which is another reason I think maybe that this week wasn't the best turnaround. And they don't have a team that's bought in. If they are going to work on this formula, it doesn't work, because the way that they structure things, they're not going to win with the formula. I think this week was a formula week. I mean, it was very evident in the first half. If the score at halftime is 6-3, yeah, that's a formula week. And the problem is, they get down to the end, they get the touchdown to go ahead with 5 minutes left, And then the defense just, it doesn't work out in the end. The defense gives up a 5-minute drive, and it comes when, like, the very end of the game, it comes down to a 4th and 4. And I think last year they got away with those 4th and 4s to win the game.
We did, yeah.
But this time it did not work. And
No,
if that's what's going to happen, I mean, we talked about it last year. They were 3 wins over probably what they should have been last year, thanks to some 4th and 4 type of deals at the end of games. And now it caught up to them, and the formula did not work this week. And that's the thing. They played to the formula, and the formula did work in the first 2-3 weeks or whatever, but it did not work this week against a good Cowboys team, And so now what do you make of that? Are you going to change things, or are you going to stay the same? Are you going to be complacent?
Well, knowing Mike Tomlin, I'd say that nothing has to change. The execution just has to be better.
Oh yeah, it's always the execution, and that's what every single player in their post-game press conference says. We got to execute. Are you sure? Are you sure you just have to execute, or is it that Pat Freiermuth? He said in his post-game press conference, he's like, "Yeah, we trust the coaches. We just got to execute," and that just sounds like a sheep answer. If you're gonna be a sheep, the only thing you ever have to say is we got to execute. What does that mean? Like what does that mean? Does it only mean the 4th and 4 at the end of the game? Is that the only thing you have to execute, or is it picking up the tight end who slipped through the offensive line, or the running back who is in the flat by himself with nobody around him, nobody even thinking about him? Is it these blown coverages deep in the secondary? Is it these runs to the outside when we have these horizontal runs with Najee that have never worked in the last 4 years? Like, at what point does it come to where the execution was there and the coaching just was not there? And if you did execute the coaching, then it just doesn't work.
Right, and I think that again, it's like, they're saying execute, of course, but our coaches just aren't putting them in the best positions. Like, it's mind-numbing to see. I was thinking about this. So Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin, very, very similar coaches. They both, got their Super Bowl when they were young. They both had long careers at their first teams. And both of them, because I've heard this from, now Cowboys fans and Packers fans, but both of them seem to struggle with challenges and timeouts and those other things. And this is the interesting thing that I wish we had done that Green Bay did is, I'd say that Mike McCarthy, just like Mike Tomlin was around 500, he had some losing seasons, and so they fired him. And they brought in Matt LaFleur, and now they've only missed the playoff once. And I would like to point out that the teams that Matt LaFleur is going to the playoff with now are not even close to as good as the teams that Mike McCarthy had. And that's where I think that, like, prime Aaron Rodgers versus prime Jordan Love, I think that, we've seen that with Mike McCarthy, how that played out once they got rid of him. And, Tomlin is just, every single season, it's the 9-8, it's 10-7. It's such a hollow thing of like, okay, but who are you beating? Like, who really are those 9 wins? Who are those 10 wins? It's always something. And I think that people just need to wake up and see that, before Ben Roethlisberger retired, there was always like a game or two a year where it was like, whoa, why did we lose that game? And then, we'd always wonder, like, is it more Ben or is it more Tomlin? And since Ben's retired, I think it's plain as day to see that it's Tomlin, who loses to these 2-10 teams. And, the reason why we haven't had a 12-win season or a 13-win season or even an 11-win season since Ben's been gone is because Ben would account for 3 or 4 game-winning drives. And so Tomlin doesn't have anyone to bail him out anymore. And so now we're stuck in this mediocrity. And I don't know I don't know if anyone's going to ever do anything about it.
Yeah. That's a great point about Mike McCarthy. I mean, there's good coaches. Well, I wouldn't say good coaches, but there's successful coaches that get fired because they don't win.
Right.
You think about you can look around all the types of sports, basketball, hockey, baseball. There's some successful coaches that get to the playoffs that don't win, that they get fired because we aren't here to just make the playoffs. The Steelers aren't here to just make the playoffs. They're sitting on 6 Super Bowl wins. All they need is one more, and they're forever enshrined in history as the first to 7. I think the Chiefs might get to 7 before the frickin' Steelers do.
Oh, my goodness.
That's the way that I feel about this, in all honesty. Mediocrity is the worst place to be. It's better to be bad than mediocre, which is why I'm more frustrated with the Pirates these last 2 seasons than I have been the previous 3 seasons. 2020, 2021, and 2022 were easier to be Pirates fans than these last 2 seasons because they were awful. I knew what I was going to get from them. I knew that they was going to suck, and my expectations weren't high. But when you hover around mediocrity, your expectations tend to go up a little bit. And if you don't meet the expectations of maybe actually winning a playoff game in a span of TJ Watt's career, that's when it gets a little frustrating. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And yeah, to your point, it's just unfortunate that all of Pittsburgh is in that right now. The Penguins, the Pirates, and the Steelers are all just can't win a playoff game, can't get to the playoffs, but we're like a game away. And that's the most unfortunate thing. And I think that I don't understand how people don't want to change this. How do other Steelers fans obviously people on the outside don't care because they can talk about how great that is, but they don't experience it. But how do other Steelers fans go through this every year and they're like, oh man, well, Tomlin's going to fix it next year. He has proven time and time again that he does not change. He does not mess with anything. These guys game plan. And I was thinking of, again, I think that you could compare John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin because, they both have 1 ring. They both, have, almost have the same amount of tenure at the Ravens and the Steelers. And the difference with Harbaugh is you just see him coach differently. The Ravens offense before Lamar Jackson was a completely different offense. And then Lamar Jackson comes in and they change everything so that he can succeed. Versus the Steelers offense is the same offense we've seen through 5 different quarterbacks over the past 3 years. Nothing has changed. Maybe a little bit now with Justin Fields, but still, that's not Tomlin. And I think that that's the big thing. The Ravens started 0-2, all right? And obviously things weren't working. And, Mike Tomlin's response is, all right, we'll just execute that play better. John Harbaugh's response is, okay, no, this isn't working. Let's talk it out. Let's fix it. Let's game plan. They game plan. They've won 3 straight, all right? And so it's just the most frustrating thing to see other coaches do this and actually coach versus a coach who's just riding off his Super Bowl win in 2008 and no losing seasons and knowing that nothing's going to happen to him.
2008's a long time ago.
It is. It really is.
You don't remember 2008 a whole lot. I do. I'm a little bit older than you, but I mean, I've talked about my fandom, my Pittsburgh fandom, to a friend recently, and was like, I mean, I was 7 years old. Well, I was 7 years old when the Steelers won the Super Bowl, and it's like, yes, I was excited. I had a Super Bowl party. I remember it. I mean, I remember the game, and the whole thing though is, I don't think my reaction to the Steelers winning a Super Bowl now would be like my reaction when they won in 2008-09, because I understand now. I've gone through all of elementary school, all of middle school, all of high school, and all of college since the Steelers have last won the Super Bowl. And it's not for the fact that they've had bad teams. I mean, they've had 9-8 teams. They've had 10-6 teams before the 17-game season. They've had good teams. They've always been above 500. And they can't find a way to sneak in there one time and win one. like it's frustrating. Like they can't figure it out. And I'll leave this as our last little thing on last week and Mike Tomlin and himself. So that very last play, actually no, two more things. So that third down with Eland and Roberts jumping over the line. That play is one of the greatest plays that you will ever see from a linebacker ever. Ever. Given the circumstances and just the sheer athleticism it takes to be able to do that, that was utterly ridiculous. Now the whole thing is, though, that play, just like the fake spike against the Cowboys several years ago, will never be remembered. It will never be remembered because the very next play, the Cowboys won the game. And that is such a shame. Just like the fake spike. You and I remember the fake spike because we're Steelers fans, and we remember that type of stuff because that's a great play. But nobody else is going to remember the fake spike. Nobody else is going to remember this Eland and Roberts the play because they lost the game on the very next play. And in between, Jalen Tolbert was the one that caught the touchdown pass at the very end of the game. He was hurt, literally unable to move his arms on when they were just about to go on fourth down, and the Cowboys had to call a timeout to get him off the field because he literally couldn't lift his arms to catch a ball. And then they lined up again with him not on the field, and then the Steelers called a timeout. Mike Tomlin, again, timeout management, clock management, whatever. There's only 25 seconds left. You better hope you get a timeout somewhere there in case they do score. He wants a different look on the defense. And then, miraculously, Jalen Tolbert, all it took was just that extra timeout. He gets back on the field. They run a pick play. Tolbert catches the ball a half yard into the end zone for a touchdown, and the Cowboys win the game. There you go. Mike Tomlin gives it to him.
It's funny. I saw that text where you texted me and you asked me what I thought of that timeout, and I saw that when I woke up. And I was like, oh, boy. And so, yeah, to hear that, it's just like, it's just not understanding in-game situations. Like, you give them an advantage when they call one to obviously get some help. And then you give them even more help by calling one on your own. It's just, we've seen stuff like that time and time again. And, yeah, it's unfortunate people don't remember the fake spike. Or the play that happened last night. And, the thing is, last night's different, but the fake spike, you know what happened right after that? Our defense let Ezekiel Elliott walk right into the end zone. So, again, it's defense. It's when you claim to be a defensive guy, why does your defense lose the game on a consistent basis and not in I don't know. There's just other ways to lose where you're just like, oh, okay, this is a very tough loss. We gave it our best. But, the way we lose, it's just wow. Did we even make them break a sweat? Did our defense really put up a fight? It looked like what we were saying last week. It looked just easy that, we were saying from the Colts last week. This week, a little different. We made it a little tougher, but it was still let's call this play, and then let's see what happens. Oh, it worked? All right, let's do this. On every third down, it was the coaching staff and the Cowboys were all right, just relax. We know what we're going to do here, and it's going to work. And it's just why on a weekly basis does that happen?
445 yards the Dallas Cowboys had this last week. And if you want to chalk it up to the defense making plays with quotes around it 3 times, actually maybe 4 times with the Loudermilk blocked punts, then you know what I'm going to say to that? You got lucky. It's luck at this point. If you're giving up 445 yards, you manage 3 turnovers and a blocked field goal, that's lucky. You're getting lucky. It's not making plays anymore. You're getting lucky, and luck doesn't win. Luck look. Oh, how about this segue? Your luck's going to run out in Vegas at some point, and Vegas is coming up next week. You like that?
That's real funny. That's a good one.
Again, you're just kind of tossing me the lob here, which is nice.
Yeah, and you know what I'll say? Like I said it last week, Tomlin has continued to rely on luck always. And let me just, all right, to anyone who likes Mike Tomlin, let me ask you this question, All right. Let me ask you this question. This is the highest paid defense in the league. All right. It has talent at every single position that, in my eyes, has not been underperforming. So you tell me this, and they've made the splash plays. You can see the talent in the turnovers, and in like all season long, you can see that talent. So you tell me that the money's not the problem, the talent's not the problem. So what on defense is the problem besides coaching? What else is the answer?
There you go. You laid it out. What possibly could they say?
Exactly.
What could they say?
I don't know what else to say to get people to see how. And with most things, it starts with the head. It's like, if something's a problem, you need to look at the head. It's like, in a household, what's the problem? If there's a problem, look at the dad. The dad always takes the blame. So it's just, I don't get it, how people don't see, like, it's just the obvious thing of like, oh my goodness, there's been this consistent problem for over all of Mike Tomlin's career. What's the issue? Well, it can't be Mike Tomlin. That's idiotic that the people say that.
Yeah, I agree. And you're the one that got me to start thinking critically about that. So thank you. That was 2 years ago, actually.
Of course, you can thank. I'm a product of my dad also, so you can thank him.
Hey, there you go. We love that.
I'm a positive. I try and think that, glass half full, and so I would always try and give Tomlin second chances, and like I'd be like, all right, he's good again, but now no more.
That's funny. Glass half full David, who has been glass fully empty these last 2 years, which is, oh man, fun times. All right, let's talk about the Ravens here before we go. The Ravens are 2-3, and their 2 wins have come against
you mean the Raiders?
Yes, I said the Ravens. Did I say the Ravens?
You did, yeah.
All right. I say the Ravens. I mean the Raiders. Las Vegas. They are 2-3, and their 2 wins have come against the AFC North. So we've got Daddy Death looking down our throats, and hey, they've gone loss win, and this is their 3rd staggered game against an AFC North opponent. And they beat the Ravens close, they beat the Browns close, and they've gotten blown out by their other 3 games. Lost bad to the Chargers week 1, lost bad to the Panthers week 3, and then lost bad to the Broncos this last week. So, trends. What do we think about trends here?
So, we're at Vegas. This is a game I think we can easily win. I think that like all things seem to line up towards a win. However, again, I just don't think we can. I don't feel confident that this team can win this week. I really don't. I think that I just don't really have faith that this team is going to be able to get it done this week. Maybe in a couple weeks, maybe we figure some things out. But this next week, I think that we're on a spiral, and so I don't really see us coming out with a win this next week.
All right, that's interesting because I'm looking at some different things, and it has been said by Antonio Pierce, the interim. I don't know if he's still interim technically, but their head coach. He said that the quarterback is in question this week, which Gardner Minshew has been the main guy mostly, but obviously they haven't put up a lot of points necessarily, and they've been struggling with just about everything. They are not running the ball well, which we said that about the Cowboys. That didn't seem to matter. And I'm also looking, Brock Bowers. I think I made that connection with the tight ends. Brock Bowers really scares me this week, and I have a bad feeling that, again, if it happens 1 week, I get it. But if it happens 2 weeks in a row, then that makes me concerned. If they keep forgetting about these tight ends, then that's a problem. And Brock Bowers is pretty much their guy. And it's ironic enough that, the whole Devontae Adams deal, like he's either going to play against us this week or he's going to be traded before then. We're doing this on what is today? Tuesday? So yes. We'll see. I don't know. If Devontae Adams is traded to the Steelers, I would be shocked this week. And for the urgency, I think, of the Raiders wanting to get a deal done, I don't think that I don't think that they would trade him to the Steelers in the same week that they play them. At least that wouldn't make any sense to me. So I think he's going to stay put this week. And if that's the case, then again, that's Devontae Adams you have to worry about on the other side. And we are hurt to all get out right now. DeMonte Casey is doubtful to play this week. DeMarvin Leal has already been ruled out this week. And then Jalen Warren and Cordarrelle Patterson. Warren is doubtful. Patterson is out officially. So, and Nick Herbig has a hamstring injury, and he is also out this week as well. So our defense is literally in shambles right now, and that is problematic in my mind. So I am going to say, again, as much as probably it's a game that they should win, I think they lose this one. Again, just based on trends. I'm a big numbers guy. I like looking at very systematic type of numbers, and it would just look right for loss win against the Steelers this week.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that it's just hard to have hope that the team is going to win. So, especially with all the stats and the stuff you're throwing out there. So, I guess my prediction this week would be 23-16. 23-16 Raiders.
Okay. And with that, I'll ask you this question. What do you think about the offense this week? Will the offense be better than the Cowboys week? Will it take a step forward? I believe that Mike Tomlin has already named Fields as the starter this week, even though it seems like Russ is healthy. I think they're going with him.
Well, that's interesting, and that's something we'll definitely have to talk about next week, because I think that I saw something that I don't know if they're saying Russ is like fully healthy. I think they're kind of still playing he's like this close, he's like almost getting there. So it'll be interesting once they claim him fully healthy what they'll do. But yeah, with Fields the starters staying the same, I think that there's no reason to think that the offense won't stay the same and come out slow and get some field goals on there and maybe get a touchdown, maybe two.
All right. So you've got a lower scoring affair, and you don't think you got some you definitely have some field goals in there. Hey, it's an indoor stadium. Maybe they'll elect to punt when Boz could kick a 57-yarder this week. What do you say to that?
Good grief.
I'll bet my house that'll happen this week. I'll bet my house.
I wouldn't be surprised.
As far as my prediction goes, I'm also very pessimistic. I don't like the way this week looks. And again, I'm just looking at the name of Brock Bowers, and I'm scared of that. So I'm going to say that the Raiders win this one 27-18. Okay. Again, I think that, I wouldn't be surprised if Pickens had a big game this week. But again, I don't think that holistically it's going to matter a whole lot. I think the Raiders are more respectable than people give them credit for. Obviously, the loss to the Panthers looks bad, but they were destined to lose that game. Like I predicted that the Panthers were going to win that game. The Raiders were destined to lose that game, so they could very well be 3-2 right now. I just don't like this week. I don't think it works out well for the Steelers, and honestly, it might just continue to allow the drama to fester. And we're getting to that point in the season where, again, you start to figure out who you are. And I think the Steelers are going to figure out who they are, and when they look in the mirror, they're going to be like, "Oh my gosh, why am I looking at Medusa right now?"
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, and I am worried to see what team shows up on Sunday.
The Raiders show up, man. Even if it doesn't look like it on the stat sheet, like they come to play. They're not a team that is just going to walk in there with the expectation to lose. Like they care. You can tell Antonio Pierce gets them to care. And I think that's going to be on full display this week. And I think the complacency of Mike Tomlin, I don't think it's going to really mean a whole lot this week to get them prepared to go out to Las Vegas and play a game. And I think it's going to be reflected on the score sheet at the end of the game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I guess all that's left to do is to see what they actually go out and do.
Yep. Well, hopefully you are feeling better by that time. I appreciate you working through a bit of a sore throat, some sickness here tonight. I appreciate you, David. It's a fun time to continue to be able to do this. And the Boardman Black and Gold podcast is sponsored, as always, by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions. Well, this is another more somber episode this week. It's not a fun episode that we get to talk about two historic franchises clashing together. I think you got to tip your cap to the Cowboys. I think they played a good game. They obviously they planned well and they played well, and they got a lot of depth guys coming in and making a lot of plays, and the Steelers just weren't ready for it. And again, I think that's reflective of Mike Tomlin's very consistent tenure as the Steelers coach, and it might continue to happen, and the Steelers might find themselves back to 500, right where they came from, by the end of this week.
I completely agree, and yeah, it's a joy to do this podcast, so I'm happy to do it, whether or not my throat's doing good or not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we continue to get hit with a reality check, or if, who knows, maybe we've got a reality check to throw at the league of our own, but we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Thanks, as always, for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We will be back next week after a Here We Go Steelers win, hopefully. Not getting our hopes up, but hopefully after a Here We Go Steelers win, we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us, and as always, let's go Steelers.